he probably came up in an industry where producers were making a lot more money, but it was a lot fewer producers that were making that money, right? They were getting 100,000 a track.
What's going down? It is no pain, no gain, all Dame today. Dame, how are you feeling today?
I'm doing okay outside of I get to work and I guess they changed the key fobs downstairs because I normally get here between 6 and 7, and you need a key fob to get in before 8. So I wasn't able to get into the building until 8, so that was a little disappointing. But doing good nonetheless.
Damn, you were camped out, huh? Like old school artists.
I normally would just go work out. Yeah, normally would just go work out. And sometimes I do work out before work, but I didn't feel like working out. So today I just hung out in the car for a second and then went and got some breakfast.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, not the end of the world, but annoying nonetheless.
You didn't try to climb the building to get to like a window?
Definitely not. All the windows are shut too. We on the 9th floor.
That'd be a good exercise. It's a lot of, Spider-Man's in shape.
Good exercise, but a terrible death.
Well, you'd go viral, so there's that. Well, yeah. The good news is 5% of all NFTs are worth something. So all hope is not lost.
Yo, we got to have a round table discussion with all of the, I think with us, I don't think we were ever like, I was doubtful, like in regards to like the people that were super hyping them up and like saying that they were going to be like the savior for independent artists. Right. I still believe there's some utility in the technology. I just don't know if people, I don't know if the fans are ready for it yet. But to all the people that were hyping them up, they were no better than any other scammer in the industry because a lot of them knew, and they were just taking advantage of the hype. And yeah, they knew that it wasn't, they were basically being marketed as, oh, this now independent artists are going to be able to make a living from music. We're going to be able to sell these NFTs for, $50,000. All you need to do is you can use an old video. You can mint an old video and get $50,000. Like a lot of these people knew. And, I've kind of circled back to see like what some of the people that were leading the charge are tweeting now. And people are still there. Some people still believe in NFTs. But yeah, most NFTs are worthless. And, it's still the same in terms of like what it takes to make it in the music. And it's not easy. And people that were marketing these NFTs, basically telling artists that there's an easy way to make a living now. Like, there were just way too many. Like, if you just think about it logically, like, who's gonna buy these things? Like, you have all these independent artists like rushing to mint NFTs. Like, who's gonna buy them? Especially when the all the crypto market took a hit, and people were essentially buying these NFTs because they had a little come up and they had a lot of money sitting in crypto. So most of the people buying them were people that just like riding the wave of crypto and just had a shitload of crypto in their wallets. So
yeah, there's a lot of argumentation about that particular point. So essentially what happened was an independent company called Dap Gamble. I don't know what they're a crypto gambling organization. Anyway, they had a sample size of a little under 75,000 NFT collections. And they used data from NFT Scan and CoinMarketCap just to analyze the crypto value of those 73,257 NFT collections, and found that slightly over 95% of them had a market cap of zero. And that's zero Ether, however, Ethereum. And so they say by their estimates, almost 23 million people hold these worthless assets. This daunting reality should serve as a sobering check on the euphoria that has often surrounded the NFT space. We've kind of spoken on that idea of the euphoria surrounding the NFT workspace, which felt, scammy. It felt like insider trading, and that's what a lot of people were speculating, or not necessarily speculating, but commenting on. The kind of the groupthink led to inflated prices, a lot of hysteria. People would sell the NFTs, and because everyone's hyping the NFTs up, the people who are already owners of the NFTs, then they drive the price up, and then they sell and they make money, and then the NFTs become worthless. There is someone on Twitter, and look, I'm skeptical about anything, especially when it's being imposed onto us in the music business, and we have questions and they don't have answers. And NFT, blockchain, etc., it was always something that, with very few exceptions, was being imposed onto us, kind of like it was a conversation of, this is what's good for you. We over here in Web3, we over here in crypto, we know what's good for you music industry people. We're here to help you buy into this idea. And then when we had questions, they were like, you fucking idiots, you don't understand. I'm like, well, how is blockchain going to help the music business when blockchain would require buy-in from the record labels? Our complaints are with the record labels not paying us and not being transparent. Yeah, but blockchain solves that. Yeah, but the record labels would have to somehow suddenly change their entire model to incorporate blockchain and decentralize everything. Yeah, you fucking idiots, you don't get it. And it's just like, man, you don't get it because you don't work in this industry. So we were already, I would say, a lot of us who work in the music business totally turned off by these conversations because they just weren't based in our reality, and they didn't really address our concern in any way other than trying to get us to migrate everything we had over to a world, aka Web3, where our consumers weren't even currently present.
Yeah. I wasn't even thinking about the record labels. I was just like, this sounds ridiculous. Like, as soon as people start hyping these NFTs up, every artist is going to want to mint one, right? So you have a hella supply, but where is the demand? Like, who's going to keep buying these? Like, the more we hype it up, the more artists are going to get interested and start minting, not one thing, two things. They're going to start minting everything. They're going to start minting their back catalog. They're going to start minting their old videos. Like, who in the hell did they think were going to keep buying all this stuff? You're going to have millions and millions, potentially billions of things minted. And then where's the market for it? Like, everybody that's always trying to find a shortcut, like we've always said, music was never supposed to be easy. It's going to be difficult. Independence is all about building a community, monetizing your community, putting out great music, being consistent, having a story. Like, you can't get around these facts. Like, if you want to try to shortcut what it really takes, you're going to fail. Or maybe you end up scamming a few people for a short while until people figure out that you're just a scammer. Like, there's no shortcuts to this.
Well, the hype worked. I mean, it did make a couple people a lot of money. But to your point, and you've spoken on this before, what you've said multiple times is that unfortunately, NFTs and a lot of the features of Web3 offer, I think you've even said all, and I'm not here to debate that, all the features offered by the Web3 folks and the NFT people have always existed. They've just never been used. You know, like, we have the ability to solve all of our problems that NFTs and blockchain and Web3 say they fix without that technology. That is, we've always had that ability. It's just that Web3 put it was like a rebranding of, like, blockchain, for example. We could have that without Web3. It's just that the powers that be don't want it. I mean, for us to decentralize royalty payments, for example, in any helpful way, we would need the buy-in from how many different agencies? From every mechanical rights agency, from every performance rights agency, from labels, from publishers, from individuals, from distributors. It would be, I mean, I would love it, but we don't need Web3 to do that. And the fact that it's not being done shows the resistance isn't because there's not some shiny new technology coming along called Web3. It's because these companies don't want decentralization. They benefit from complicating royalty payments. That's just the reality. But also, to your point, remember, I'm still getting comments from this, from people who are on this whole Tory Lanez NFT album thing, where it was like, man, Payne, and it's always negative. It's always, Payne, you're so goddamn stupid. You don't see what other people are doing. You don't see the future. Look what Tory Lanez did. Look, if what Tory Lanez did worked, everyone would be doing it. That whole, and people are like, oh man, Tory Lanez made $1 million in 15 minutes off the album. One, your brain is that of a toddler's if you think generating $1 million off of an NFT means you netted $1 million. That's one of the dumbest things you could possibly say. And I'm already done with the conversation before it starts. But the other thing is, a lot of people are touting the investment element of the Tory Lanez NFT or the album, whatever we're calling it. It didn't increase in value. So I think people saw one article where it was like someone selling the copy of their Tory Lanez album for $45,000. They didn't sell it. They were selling it. I can go to the corner right now and put up a sign and advertise this cup of half drunk water for 15 million. And if you're a fucking idiot, you might go out and do the same simply because I tweeted that I'm doing this, and you equate attempting to do something with succeeding at doing something. So that's another thing that turned me. I'm going super hard on NFTs. I do want to say something, in their favor from their own words, because I don't want to make it seem like I'm being unfair. All I'm saying is virtually every conversation, not the conversation we had a couple of people on here to talk about NFTs, and they were incredibly specific and honest and upfront about how they were using NFTs in Web3. That's one thing. The disrespectful condescension from people who have never lived a day in our shoes, talking about how stupid we are for not adapting their technology that doesn't even that isn't even informed by what we're actually going through. That's the part that turned me off about all this stuff. But
before people start coming at you because you said something like and if like there are certain things that NFTs can do that we don't necessarily have the ability to do now, like the reselling and like getting a commission on future sales. Like there are a few things, but for the most part, like transparency. People were saying NFTs will provide transparency. Like we don't need NFTs to provide more transparency. Like you said, if the industry wanted to provide more transparency. So I'm not going to sit here and say that We have the ability to do everything that an NFT could do before we had NFTs. But for the most part, there's a lot of things that people thought that NFTs would bring to the table that we already could do, and people were already doing, whether it was like, selling limited albums for more money. But it really does take an industry shift and the buy-in from a lot of parties to make things quicker, to make things more transparent. And that's one of the bigger issues. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
done with NFT. I'm done. Anybody, there's a company that I spoke to yesterday because they hit me up and wanted to ask a few questions, and they have an NFT component to their website. And I didn't say it. I meant to actually. I was like, you probably should just hide that part of, like, if you use blockchain technology, just put it in the back. Like if you need blockchain technology for something, just hide it in the back so people don't see it. Because I think at this point, NFTs have a negative connotation, and people are like, have kind of moved on from it.
Well, and
Because
what a shame, because it had a lot of potential.
no, I think the technology will still be here, but it should just be, if you're using NFT technology, just, I wouldn't even call it an NFT. I would just
Sure.
use the tech.
Well, I just mean it's a shame that, because I don't imagine everyone involved in this technology was a grifter or a scammer or someone that just was so greedy that they were willing to run this Ponzi scheme and be on Twitter all day hyping up, this NFT's viability and that piece of technology, because it was like all those scammy music ads where it's like, but there's that guy on YouTube that's like, my Spotify went from 1 million or 100 plays a day to 100 million plays a day. Get this Spotify bought. No, I don't know where his accent's from, but it's interesting. And you look at that shit and you're like, if you're smart, you're like, that's a scam. But that's unfortunately the way that, they were talking about NFTs. And I had a guy yesterday, and I got to follow up with him. He wanted to buy an exclusive beat from me, and he reached out on my verified Facebook page through my ManyChat app, which gives you my my business number to text me, which he did. And then I'm like, yeah, here's all the information. I'm handling everything on my end on my website. Here's the link. I adjusted the price for the exclusive rights to this beat. And he was so skeptical. He still hasn't bought it because he was saying, I just need to know it's you. I don't want it to be a scam. And it's because scams are so normalized now in the music business. Even someone legitimate, even someone who's communicating you through a verified profile, now that shit is out the window because of Meta and Elon Musk charging you, just a couple dollars to verify yourself. So that doesn't mean safety. That doesn't mean authenticity. Verification badges don't mean anything. And then there's just the element that everyone is scamming in the music business. So then
It's not even just the music. It's not just the music business. I mean, there's scams. People call you, trying to get your social security number. Like there's scams every which way you turn, just in life. Like people are out there. They're going hard.
Yeah, no, they are. But like with NFTs, there were a lot of people doing that. And it felt like there was a critical mass where you couldn't even bring up NFTs without people who were screaming, one, about how much money you could make. They were essentially marketing it as a get rich quick scheme. And two, you would get dogpiled if you asked questions. Because I made the mistake of asking questions about NFTs. I'm like, wait a minute, I challenge this particular topic and I just get piled on. You're an idiot. You're going to fail. Watch. And in 2 years, when NFTs take over, you're not going to have a career. Well, I'm still here and things are looking bleak for you guys, but it's just sad that that's how it went down when it could have been a more authentic conversation and a more gradual introduction to all this technology. And now it's at the point where, like you said, people are turned off because they're so used to it being a scam.
Yeah, but I just know, like, I know my wife gets hit up, gets random calls. There's get random email, like the Facebook scams are ridiculous. Like if you have a Facebook page that has a decent amount of followers,
Oh
then
God.
you're gonna be getting emails literally daily that are pretty much just scams
You're talking
that
about
are
the
trying.
we want to advertise on your page.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they essentially just want to try to get access to your page, and then they do whatever. Maybe they direct the monetization to. I don't know what happens, but these emails are ridiculous, and they come daily.
Yeah, I get 10 a
Like
day.
it's nonstop.
There's another
So
scam too where they contact you and say there's some kind of, and it's always, I don't know what it is. I've gotten a couple of them, and it's always, we are sponsored by Nike. They're always sponsored by Nike. And it's a podcast that, do you
yeah,
know what I'm talking about? It's a podcast that's sponsored by
yeah.
Nike, and we want to pay you
They'll pay you
$2,000
$2,000.
to be on the podcast. You just have to give us access to something through something else. And I would say
Mm-hmm.
his name, because it's a famous dude. And I actually reached out to him on Instagram. I'm like, is this really your thing? And he's like, yeah. Is a fairly famous musician slash producer. I would say his name if I could remember it, because I don't like that shit. But they tried to get me, and then like 2 months later, they tried to get me again with the same email as though I was brand new to them. And then an entirely different artist used the same script on me. So, man, be careful out there.
Yeah.
But in NFT's favor, I guess, NFT his username is, or their username is Punk9059 on X. I don't want to call it X. It's Twitter. And they say, first of all, most NFTs have always been worthless. The vast majority. So now this is language I can understand because it's parallels streaming and artist catalogs. They say the vast majority of NFT contracts never do more than 10 ETH of volume ever. 90% never hit 100 ETH of volume. And they're referring to the Rolling Stone article, my favorite publication on the planet. And now my favorite band, since one of their members is on a racist anti-hip-hop rant. So the headline by Rolling Stone was far more a long-time fact than a new evolution. It would have been true in a bull market too. So what they're saying is that if the articles are saying 95% of NFTs are effectively worthless and 5% are around $100 and up, that's how it's always been. This isn't new information. It's not that those values have dropped. It's that that's how the market has always been. Again, I don't
Both
know.
both are true. Both are true. I mean, I know that, like I said, everybody started minting something left and right, and there just was very little demand, so people weren't buying them. But it's also true that the value has dropped of any NFT, even those Bored Apes. Those Bored Apes that were going for like millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I know that though. I think I saw an article that was like one was like 40,000 now. So that's a pretty significant decline from the hundreds of thousands or $1 million NFT. So both can be true.
Well, and then they continue by saying, but still to say that everything is, oh, wait, no, hold on. This is not to say that NFTs are doing well. My large cap index of projects that hit 10 plus ETH at one point is down 83% from its peak. Okay, so the value is dropping. And then lastly, which is interesting, they say, but still to say that everything is worthless and we've hit rock bottom when the 7 projects below are alone worth over 1.65 billion feels sensationalist and disingenuous. Yeah, I mean, look, Rolling Stone articles are almost always sensationalist and oftentimes disingenuous. And this is interesting too, because the top 7 projects are Crypto Punks, Basie, Chromie Squiggies, Macy, this Texas Ringers. I guess Bored Ape. I'm thinking like, well, Bored Ape should be up there if it has value, because that was kind of the one that was hyped up the most. That's by Yuga Labs. I don't see that in the top 7. Maybe they're number 8. Maybe they're in the top 10. Maybe they're in the top 20. I don't know. But wow, CryptoPunks is like this, and everything else is half or below in terms of market cap. So we're getting into some more advanced stuff that I admittedly don't feel competent to speak on. Regardless, there's something going on with NFTs, and it's not what we were sold.
Yeah, I mean, I'm off the NFT stuff. I'm good.
Well, we've been saying that for like 2 years.
You know, artists just get back to doing what you need to do. Build your career brick by brick, fan by fan. That's what you got to do. For those that have kind of stayed the path and are continuing to do that, keep rocking.
I think the other thing too, though, is like anytime an artist does something that they make a ton of money off of that's non-traditional, everyone runs to it and they're like, that's what artists have to do. And it's absolutely not what artists have to do. It's what works for certain artists. And they always market it as this get rich quick thing. Like, all you have to do is this. All you have to do is that. Do what Nipsey did, do what La Russell did, do what Tory Lanez did. And it's like, all those people had fans, all those people had tons of experience, all those people had innovative ideas, all those people had good music. You really just can't wake up one day and be like, you know what? I got 100 monthly listeners. Fuck it. Let's make an NFT. I'm about to get rich. I'm going to sell t-shirts for 80,000 each, but I'm only going to print up 3 of them. But you can't get 10 people in through the door at a show for $10. It is just, when things are marketed as get rich quick schemes, they fail and you deceive people. And that's my problem with a lot of this stuff.
I mean, it just goes back to the same thing that I've said years ago and all the time. Like, it's music is only for, a very small percentage of artists, right? Like, a very small percentage of artists are going to be successful or going to have a career in music. I don't know what that percentage is, but if I had to guess, it's probably like less than 5%. Right. So, and it's a frustrating pursuit. It's going to have highs and lows. And, I think that's why a lot of artists succumb to some of these scams or go down these NFT rabbit holes because they're frustrated. I get it. I mean, I understand. But, some people think that to make it, you got to be unrealistic. Like, I'm not in that camp. I would rather like understand what it takes and work at that and just, day by day, make some progress. But, for a career path where less than 5% of the people that are going to try it are going to be successful, you're going to get a lot of wild things happening. So yeah, it's frustrating, but that's just the reality. That's just the reality. But on the flip side of that, I'm in the Two Lost office right now. We have artists come through daily that are doing well, that are crushing it, killing it. I speak with a lot of the 5%, right? And it is a possibility. So, and people have different opinions on the best way to pursue music. I guess I would rather live in reality. I would rather know exactly what I need to do and not be delusional and try to compete that way. But, some people will tell artists that it takes a little bit of delusion to make it. or a lot of delusion. I don't know, but
Well, I think it takes delusion to keep you going when things are looking bleak, but delusion shouldn't be your revenue model. You know,
yeah.
that's something different.
Let's
But
get to that video. I'm not going to have too much time to talk about it. So I want to
yeah,
make sure we get that.
so Arsonist, who's a legendary producer, basically created the Dipset sound. Had a viral moment recently speaking on the music business. And I know, Damien, you want to address that. So let me play the video so we can hear it in his own words.
Universal Records makes $51 million a day. I don't know if you knew that, right?
I believe it though.
Universal Records about 30 to 40% owner of Spotify.
I heard about that.
How is anybody independent? How can you call yourself an independent artist? You still giving money to Universal Records when your shit gets played on Spotify.
That's a big.
How is anybody independent? You talking all this independent shit. We in the worst place we have ever been as musicians right now. All the advertisement dollars that Spotify makes, Apple Music makes, whatever, right? We're supposed to get a portion of that. We don't. We've been getting the same money since they've started, right? Their advertisement dollars have gone up 20, 30 times since then. Why are we still getting the same shit of this mythical number that they made up? What's the value of a song? Nobody can tell me this shit for years. What is one song worth in the digital world?
There are so many issues with what he said. I don't even know where to start. Universal doesn't own 30 to 40% of Spotify. They do have ownership, but it's definitely not that high. It's not that high. So
I looked it up and I found it to be closer to 4%. But
yeah, it's definitely not 30 to 40% of Spotify. So that's one thing. Two, claiming that you're not independent because majors own a small percentage of Spotify. It's another wild point that I don't understand. Like, independence is about, having the creative freedom, owning at least a good percentage of your masters. I don't even believe you have to own like all of your masters. If you get an investor and they're entitled to, a percentage of your masters, then you're still independent. But to me, it's about, having the creative freedom, the ability to move how you want, put out music when you want, having ownership in your music. Just because major labels own a small percentage of Spotify, you're not independent. That's wild. That's a wild take. That's to me, I guess, yeah, that's just a wild take to me. From what I understand, Spotify pays out 70% of both advertisement revenue and with regards to music. I know that the business model is a little different when it comes to podcasting, and I think the margins are better, and that's why they've leaned a little more into podcasting, although I know that they've divested a bit as well in recent months. But from what I understand, they pay out 70% of the subscription and the advertising revenue to the rights holders. So if you're signed to a major, you have a deal. Sometimes that's what makes streaming a lot less lucrative. Independent artists that own their masters and get all of their streaming revenue, I would still argue that Spotify can pay more, or not can, or maybe we can talk about the 0.003% or whatever it is. But like I just told you 10 minutes ago, artists are out here winning. Artists are out here getting big deals because of streaming. Like, there are people on the Two Lost platform. There's an artist that we just brought over that is literally making $120,000 a month from streaming. Like, and this is like passive. Like, it will continue. Some people compare like selling CDs one time to streaming. Like, you can't really do that, because if you make $5,000 from streaming one month, it's not going to go to zero the next month unless everything came from playlisting and your songs were taken off play. Like, that doesn't happen. Like, you're going to have, It may not be 5,000, it might be 400, it might be 4,999. It might go up, but you're going to have continuous income stream from these streams. I'm not saying streaming is perfect. I just think that it has a much more negative reputation than it should have. Right. So
well, in defense of
what else did you say that was wild? Like I just felt like all of that was pretty wild and just not factually correct.
I want to know his source, because I'm just wondering if, to give him the benefit of the doubt, he's referring to not necessarily their stock in Spotify, but maybe their market share of a catalog that is generating money from Spotify. Because as we know, the vast majority of artists who have music on Spotify aren't generating anything. It's a very small percentage of music on any streaming platform, all the streaming platforms combined, that generates anything. And if you look at who the top earners on streaming platforms are, they are, I believe Drake is number one, maybe Taylor Swift is number one now, but it's they're up there. Who are they signed to? Universal. So in terms of market share, when it comes to streaming revenue, I imagine Universal might claim 70% of it or close to it. I don't know if that's what he's getting at. There's a lot going on with Spotify, but again, we have to look at, I would say, where you're coming from versus where he's coming from. I know that he came up through the majors. I know you came up through the independents, and you're working for a distributor that has access to, I'd say, really promising data on how well unsigned independent artists are doing in the streaming world. I think that's fair to say. I don't know if he has that perspective. And if you're looking at streaming entirely through the lens of an artist who's signed to a major label, then a lot of the deals that majors, I can see why major label artists or legacy artists who were once signed to a major, whose catalogs are still owned by the major, are disgruntled by streaming. And I don't know if you're familiar with the lawsuits, like the Black Sheep lawsuit.
There are a lot of issues with streaming, right? For sure. I think there needs to be something to fix how songwriters get paid, producers get paid. But what I would also tell him, if now is the worst time ever to be an artist, why do we have more independent artists today than we've ever had? Like if now is the worst time, that would be my number one question to him. I would say, why do we have more independent artists than ever before in the history of music today, if now is the worst time to be an artist? I would just love to hear an answer to that question. Like, I just don't think cats like him are privy to like the artists that are just out here crushing it, like not complaining. Again, it's not a perfect system. Things need to change. Things need to evolve. But like, I'm seeing the statements. I'm meeting the artists. Like this is very real. So yeah, cats need to have more conversations. I wish they can come up here and,
I'd love to have Arsonist on here, mostly because I'm just a fan of Arsonist. But I think I'm curious to know exactly what those statistics mean in terms of actual tangible music industry sources. That's like 70% of what, that kind of thing. Are you talking about stock, et cetera? Because a lot of the things that people say on podcasts or in articles don't ever get clarified, because people just say, oh, 70%. Yeah, 70%. They never ask 70% of what. And then they just run with that 70% statistic So I just want to know what he's referring to. And we have mutual friends. So, maybe I can reach out to him and ask.
What was this? I didn't hear. What was the 70% in what he said? I don't.
Oh, my bad. Not 70, 30 to 40%. So I just want to know what that number's from. The other thing too is,
I mean, he sounds so confident and so passionate. Like even the other cats in the room, they're like all they can say is facts. Like, bro, that's what
right.
There's so many things that aren't facts in what he just said, but because he's on your podcast and you're not knowledgeable, you're just gonna sit there and like gas him up.
Well, now we got to have the podcast people on our podcast.
But if somebody comes on your podcast and starts saying stuff, and just if I really don't like know that what that person's saying is true, like I'm not gonna sit here and be like facts. Like, bro, I would ask, like, where is that number coming from? I know that you don't want to disrespect the person on your podcast, but at the end of the day, I feel like we have a responsibility to the people that are listening more so than, just catering to your guest.
Yeah, I don't think that's disrespectful. Just asking Claire.
No,
but the other thing too is like I've definitely interviewed people and they've said something that just went over my head because I'm not experienced. And like after the fact, I think, nah, something's not right about that, and I wish I had asked. But granted, if the whole conversation is about the music business and all this stuff is going over my head, I'm going to start asking questions. Or even if it's not about the music business, if someone's throwing stats out and they seem shocking, yeah, we need to have a conversation about where those numbers are coming from. But yeah, I mean, the reason why, number one, obviously he's passionate about what he's saying, so you feel what he's saying, even if you're not necessarily listening to the numbers and correlating those numbers to something in the real world. But otherwise, as an artist, people are upset with stagnant royalty rates. People are upset with how the labels did these backdoor deals with Spotify that the artists that were signed to those labels years before streaming existed were not a part of and didn't really benefit from. All of that is true. All of that is a problem for musicians. All of that, the splits, what's the value of a stream? No one can tell you. I mean, I challenge anyone in the comments to find a definitive answer to what the value of a stream is. You can. It's based on country. It's based on how many streams the artist gets. It's based on who the streamers are, who's streaming the music, what kind of account they have, what time of day. There are just all these factors. So you can't. But again, radio was kind of like that too. In a sense, it's all very much obscured and convoluted. So those of us who aren't benefiting from streaming, we're not primarily benefiting from streaming. There are artists making great money from streaming, but ultimately the labels are still the ones making, I think, 18 million a day. Let me look that up since we're talking about stats and making sure that.
Because I was literally just trying to look that up and it said
18.7 million in a day. That's Universal Music Group alone. Oh, my bad. No, that's how much Universal Music Group makes in a day, period. But then another statistic I found is that so he said 51. Yeah, I don't know where that came from. Yeah.
It's still a lot of
it's a lot of money.
We can have a conversation because some of the points that he makes are valid, but we have to dial it down and we have to speak actual facts. Don't sit here and say Universal is making, $85 billion a minute just to make a point. I can't have a conversation if we're not gonna speak in facts, right? So but a lot of what he's saying makes sense. I think he seems like an older cat, so he probably came up in an industry where producers were making a lot more money, but it was a lot fewer producers that were making that money, right? They were getting, you
Yeah.
know, 100,000 a track, 250,000 a track, whatever, you know. So I get it. It's a different time, you know. I think as the music industry evolves, like the business changes for everybody, no matter what position that you're in. The business changes for a manager, the business changes for a publicist, for an artist, producer, songwriter. You know, and again, it's not perfect. And I think it's gotten worse for a lot of those different roles, right? It's gotten worse for managers, in my opinion. Like, you know, I don't think anybody's just like super happy with their role. But like I said, there's more independent artists today. So something has to be positive. Like something has to be positive. Like money's coming back. Finance companies are in the industry now. So there must be money, right? So yeah, I mean, if you want to have them on the podcast, sure. But I'm not just gonna.
Okay, so this is interesting though. Speaking of, so I'm like, yeah, they were making way more money back in the early 2000s, and so a lot of producers, because I have this conversation all the time, because I'm the online guy, and when I came in the game, producers were making 10,000 for a major placement. If they were kind of newer, 20, 30, 40,000 if they're more established. And, it depends on the project, obviously. Anyone coming out saying, I get this set rate for beats and you can't ever tell me, anything lower. Nah, people are negotiating. If someone offers you 20,000 for a beat, but the last beat you sold was for 30,000, you're going to take the 20,000. If it's a project that you want to be on, 20,000 is fine. But anyway, the music industry, according to Lisk, generated in the year 2001 $20 billion, which is a lot, because in later years it seemed to drop. I don't know. Wikipedia apparently has different stats, so who knows? But according to Statista, in 2022, the total revenue of the recorded music industry amounted to 31.2 billion, and global streaming revenues reached 20 billion the same year, which means streaming by itself in 2022 is generating, or was generating, as much money as physical sales in total. The whole music business, including physical sales, generated in 2001. Obviously, when you look at those numbers, they're the same, but with inflation, you got to take that into account. However, if the net total or gross revenue generated, I don't know if it's net or gross, however that works, probably gross. If the gross in 2001 was 20 and in 2022 it's 31.2, there is growth there. So I think we've looked at stats before and numbers are up and down, but there is money to be made in the music business. It's just that either it's being spread out more, it's being concentrated more, it's being hidden more. And I would argue that all of the above is what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, if you account for inflation, then that number should, to compare it would, can't do this math in my head, but it's probably like 60 billion or something ridiculous. But what I would want to see, which would be more interesting to me, living in the world that I live in, the independent space, mostly, like what percentage of, the 20 billion in 2000 went to independent artists versus what percentage of the 30 billion today goes to independent artists. I bet you that percentage is significantly higher.
Yes.
I bet you it's quadrupled the number, at least triple.
I mean, I would imagine so, because like back in 2001, you either had to be a grinder when it came to being an independent music. I mean, you have to grind no matter what, but you had to do the touring, you had to do the merch. Like I just interviewed Sage Francis, all the stuff that he was doing, just to pay his bills back then. And I wish maybe I can ask him back, but I'd love to have more musicians in that era to talk about the transition between then and now when it comes to stream. But most of them are still doing merch. I know artists who are just streaming. They're not even playing shows, and they can generate based on whatever focus they've created, usually a social media following, something global. They are unsigned and they're making their living mostly off of streaming nowadays. So this is a revenue model that wasn't available back in 2001, or an income stream that wasn't available back in 2001. That's not to say it's easy. I think that's where people get it messed up, where just because we're saying it's possible, we're not saying it's the norm, and we're not saying it's easy. And we're certainly not saying you don't have to put in work to sit at home and generate money off streaming. I don't consider that passive income. You have to be active as fuck to make that type of money.
Yeah. I mean, it's like we've been saying this whole episode, it's not, I'm definitely going to not sit here and say that it's easy for most. To be honest with you, I have come across some artists that found it easy. But that is not the norm. That is not the norm. So I would not promote that. But, there are some artists these days that will say it's easy.
Well, there were artists back then that would say it was easy.
Because it was, and I don't even think they're lying. It just was for them. Yeah. They, for whatever reason, maybe they just had a natural knack for building an audience, or maybe they just, put out some fun songs and it just happened to go. Like sometimes you put out a song and it just goes and we don't know why. Sometimes a TikToker will use it and blow it up. I mean, that's just the value of, and maybe that person wasn't even consistent. You can get lucky in life. That's just life. Everybody can get lucky.
Well, yeah, let's not end on that, because I don't want people thinking that's our advice.
Well, I'm not suggesting it. I'm just saying it does happen. Just you just shouldn't follow that model of somebody that did just get lucky.
Well, yeah, but that's what you see in the music business. You see so many people talking about, well, some people blow up overnight. It's like, yeah, but it's like 0.05%. So are you going to quit your job tomorrow because some people win the lottery? And there are people out there who have invested all of their time and energy to playing the lottery, and those are not the people that win it, ironically, I guess. So don't do that. Hopefully we can have, I think this is a good conversation to have ongoing, because people are always making comparisons about how the old music business used to be more profitable, how the new business is so saturated and no one's making any money, and streaming is the culprit. But again, there's money in streaming. Is it because of the way that this money is distributed that we're not seeing it that way, or what? So I want to continue having that conversation. Until then, Dame, what are your final thoughts? Do you have something that you want to shout out or mention for people to check out?
We should be launching a contest soon for independent artists. So just be on the lookout for that. It'll be hosted by Two Lost, and hopefully a special guest that I can't announce just yet because we're still going back and forth. But definitely just follow Two Lost at Two Lost, or myself. Obviously, I'll be promoting it as well. But it'll be a dope opportunity and a chance for artists to win a little bread. So be on the lookout for that.
Cool, man. Appreciate you tuning in. We'll be back next week. Peace.
Peace. Oh.